I pull out this ring box, I give it to her. And in that moment, as soon as I handed that thing to her, I immediately wanted to snatch it out of her hands and say, just kidding, because that was the moment when I knew with absolute certainty what I was and was not supposed to do.
What's up, alumni? This is Selah, and I'm your host for today. I'm putting John in the hot seat as our guest for this episode, and he's going to close out the Oops series with his own story of failure in life after graduation. It's one he's mentioned before on the podcast, but never told in full. Have you ever asked someone to marry you, then immediately regretted it? Well, John has, and he is going to tell us all about it today. Welcome to After 4, your podcast for navigating life after graduation. I'm your host and guide, Selah Magruder, and this one's for you, alumni. John, welcome to your own podcast.
That's hilarious. Oh, it is so great to be here. Same seat, but different side of the microphone, I guess.
Yeah, I'm assuming it's probably been a little while since you've been on this podcast, so why won't you give us another little introduction?
Okay, I will do that. Yes, just in case there's anybody new tuning in here today. So I'm John Steele. I do typically host the podcast, but not for today. And let's see here. I'm an InterVarsity alum circa 2011 from Minnesota State, Mankato. I am married. My wife Caitlin and I, as of the recording of this podcast, as of the recording date, we've been married for 11 and a half years. And our two daughters, Aurora and Luna, are 7 and 3, also at the time of recording this. So it's an interesting household. Things are a little crazy right now. And when you and I are recording, it's just pre-Christmas. So everybody's just like going bonkers for the Christmas season right now. Excited to see cousins and all of that kind of stuff. So, and I love to play music. I've been playing music. I played music when I was a student with InterVarsity. That's where I really cut my teeth on worship team kind of stuff. And I've continued leading in church since then. I do that a lot now. And I also am part of a cover band with my friend Harrison, who is also a Mankato InterVarsity alum. So it's been fun to, we're different eras of the chapter, but it's been a lot of fun to get to play gigs around town together. It's been super fun.
That's awesome. A very multi-talented man.
Yeah, something like that.
Podcast, music, all of it. Awesome.
There you go.
So in this series called Oops, you've been interviewing other people about failures, things that they would consider failures then after graduation. So I kind of just want to ask you, what was a failure what was a point of your after graduation that you considered a failure, or a moment that felt like a failure?
Yes. Boy. So we've been, as you said, talking to people about failure. I couldn't find a fourth person to to come on the podcast and talk about their big failures. I don't know why people weren't just like foaming at the mouth to volunteer for that. Thank you, Selah, for being one of the people who did that just last week. So I volunteered as tribute. I am officially Katniss Everdeen this week. Exactly. Yeah, so the story I'm going to tell, this is something that I have mentioned on the podcast a bunch of times, but as you said in our intro, is not something that I have told in great detail. And so I'm going to do that. I'm going to try to do it without telling it in too great of detail. So sometimes it's difficult to tell the story to the right amount of detail.
Give us all the tea. We're there.
Yeah, okay. All right. We'll let Caleb edit whatever isn't helpful. So this is the story of my failed I will say almost engagement, and I'll explain why it's almost. I would consider it a very brief engagement, but other people might not agree. But I'll explain why that's the case in a little bit here. So to set the scene, as I have said a number of times, I moved to Minnesota for two things. One of them was for a grad program, and the other was for a girl. And the only reason I explored the grad program here is because it was close to where this woman lived that I was pursuing a long distance relationship with. And so really it was for a relationship, and school was sort of the tack on. So this was like a fundamental thing that I was in pursuit of when I moved to Mankato. And we had gone through like this whole sort of season of, like I said, dating long distance. We met at the university where I did undergrad, but through a tragic series of events, she lost a close family member, and that prompted her to transfer to Winona State here in Minnesota, close to where she lives, or where she lived at the time. And so we transitioned to dating long distance, and we did that for basically the rest of my college career. So like 2+ years of long distance. And then it came time for grad school. When I became a psych major, I didn't actually know that grad school was a thing that I was going to have to do. And then I found out, oh, okay, unless I just want college to have been a hobby, I'm going to have to go on to grad school. And so I started looking, and in particular, looking for places that were close to her. And so that's why I ended up in Mankato at Minnesota State. And so when I moved here, she was literally the only person that I knew, aside from the few interactions that I had had with my cohort leading up to the start of the semester and some of my professors. But as far as real relationships went, I knew nobody. So I was very committed to like being with her as much as I could. She was my go-to person, especially in these early days. So we were very, very tied together in that time. And but it didn't take long before I could sense that things were starting to shift. Like something, I came back from Thanksgiving break, actually, my very first semester, and our first time kind of back together in the same space. I just had this sense that like something is different, and I could not tell you to this day. I couldn't tell you what it was, but I just knew like something changed, and really I should have known way before that maybe things weren't going to go well, because the part of the backstory that I didn't tell yet is that the summer before I moved to Mankato, she actually broke up with me. So I had already like committed to Mankato and am planning to like move, states away from home. And she broke up with me for the summer. And, in her defense, I was the first person she had dated. So she kind of felt like, man, if this is real, if this is serious, I got to know for sure that this is the right move. So there was some wisdom in that. But at the same time, I probably should have kept it filed away in the back of my mind that she was asking the question, is John Steele really... Is John Steele really good enough? Is he really the one? And so that should have been an indicator probably that things were not going well. But anyways, fast forward back to Thanksgiving break. I come back from that. Things start to not feel great. And that really set me on a few months of like discernment of like, what do I do? What do I do here? And I started getting the sense that it's like, okay, a decision needs to be made here. Either I need to end things so that we can both sort of move on with our lives, or we need to take the next step of commitment and just say like, okay, we're all in, we're doing this. And so in that process of discernment, I actually ended up buying an empty ring box. And the reason that I bought an empty ring box is because she made it very clear that she wanted to be a part of the ring picking process leading up to official engagement. So I bought this box as sort of a like, okay, I'm going to have this thing, and this will be my sort of surprise pre-proposal. This is the one thing of control I can have. But I also wrote down a prayer on a piece of paper. I folded it up and I put it inside the ring box. And essentially, it was like, Lord, will you just live in this space, and will you help me will you just help me discern what is the right next step to take? And so it felt like sort of this I don't know, this placeholder for like, okay, God, you are at work, you're helping me discern, and I'm going to take some time to just pray through this. And I did that. And eventually I felt like, well, nothing is really changing here. Like I feel just as conflicted as I did before. So it's time to make a decision. And the decision that I made was to propose, or to do this pre-proposal. And so spring break comes along, and I had plans so we've gone from Thanksgiving all the way to spring break, feeling this like intense sort of conflict within me about what do we do here? And then spring break comes along. We had plans to just hang out. Like for my spring break, I was going to go to her family's house, and we were just going to hang out for the week together. In the midst of that spring break was also the anniversary of like the first time that we recall meeting each other. So it felt like this is perfect right here. This very meaningful moment.
Sentimental.
So yes, exactly. Like, okay, here's this great sentimental moment. It's not, it's not Valentine's Day or any of that. So it's like, this is the day that we met, and I'm going to ask her, not officially to marry me, but to like, I'm going to ask her, let's go find something to put in this box, as sort of like pre-proposal sort of thing. Well, so I do that. The night comes, we've spent sort of this evening together, enjoying the fact that, okay, here for these few years we've been together, and I pull out this ring box, I give it to her, and I say, I think we should find something to put in this box, or I think we should find something to put in this. And she takes it, she unwraps it, and it's this empty ring box. And in that moment, as soon as I handed that thing to her, I immediately wanted to snatch it out of her hands and say, just kidding, because that was the moment when I knew with absolute certainty what I was and was not supposed to do. And Selah, I am not even exaggerating when it felt like my insides turned to liquid hot magma, and not in a romantic way. like I seriously felt like I was melting from the inside, because I had just taken a step towards really changing both of our lives in a way that was not right, that was not going to be good, or certainly was not going to be the best for us. And let me remind you, I am like at her house for spring break with her family, and I have just done this thing that I'm like, this is a huge mistake. So the next day, I told her, I was like, I think I made a mistake giving you that box. And as you can imagine, the next 24 hours, I didn't leave. Like I should have just left. I should have said, I made a mistake. I think we both need some space here to think and figure out what's next. But I stayed, and we had a very awkward 24 hours. Her parents kept asking, what's wrong? Like, what's going on? And a day later, I ended up saying, like, I did finally say, I think that I need some space to think about what's happened here. And within a couple of weeks, we had officially broken up. And there were some things that I had left at her house. Like I sort of just left really quickly. And she, when we officially decided it was time to be done, she's like, there's a couple of things that I have here. Like I'm going to put them in the garage. The door will be open. Come get them. I came back and I picked them up. And I remember like this thing that's just burned into my brain is that I went and I got them. I put them in my truck. I started driving away, and her youngest sister was standing in the window and was just waving at me. Like I don't and it was like, this is the saddest, like sort of it felt like this movie moment of like this, like her representative, her sister standing there just very sadly waving to me. So that's the memory that I have of like what felt like the biggest failure experience in my life after graduation. And but there were two, I will say there were two really funny moments that came out of this too. When we decided to split, it was the same weekend as when there was a psychology conference, and her town is actually the one that hosted it. So I was in town with my cohort at this overnight psych conference. And up to that point, the plan was we're going to sort of fix things. And then again, I'm going to stay overnight with you and your family. And then I'll go back to the second half of the psych conference the next day. We split in between those days, like on the lunch break or something. And I didn't have a hotel room.
Oh.
Yeah. Yes. It was a rough lunch break. I didn't have a hotel room for the night because I was going to stay there. And one of my classmates, bless her heart, she told me, John, this is a sad situation. I just want you to know that I trust you to share my bed with me if you need a room. And I was just like, nah, thanks. And I do legitimately think she was like not trying to make a move.
Good
I think she was honestly, yes, I do think it was that. But at the same time, I was just like, I think I'll find a different place.
I'll sleep in the hallway.
To sleep.
Thank you.
Exactly. Yeah.
Just give me a pillow. I'll take a pillow.
Yes, exactly.
Oh,
and
John,
then
that's so funny.
the other moment is when I came back to campus, the next InterVarsity event. I had a good friend in the chapter, and I told him, like, yeah, man, I just broke up with my girlfriend in the last couple of days. And apparently he was not listening when I said that. And his sort of off the cuff answer to me in that moment was, that's cool. So, and
not in smile, not in smile.
Yes. And so thankfully, like, he's just such a lovable guy that I could not help but just like belly laugh so hard that he said that. And it was actually really good for my healing in that moment. So anyways, there's my story of failure and a couple of funny moments that came along with it. Well,
I know it would be a little like, Selah, were you not like listening? But like, what about that? What about that moment felt like a failure?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's many different ways we can interpret failure and that we can experience and feel like something. And this, that does feel like, okay, failed relationship here. But it was, so much more than just the fact that very embarrassing, painful moment happened right there and was just unfolding for both of us. Like there was certainly that, but also like the fact that I felt like I had really rolled the dice on my future, every part of my future, like financially, relationally. I mean, just like as far as what my relationship with my family would even look like. I had never intended to leave Indiana. Like for the rest of my life, I planned to live in Indiana. And I had been accepted at a university in Indiana for grad school. So I could have just been a couple hours away from home and just said like, forget all of that stuff. And I really only chose Mankato, which was 10 hours away from home, to be close to her. And now I was alone. I was beginning to develop a relationship with InterVarsity people, but still, like, I didn't know people in my cohort very well at all. I was not super close to my InterVarsity chapter at this time. And I still had the hardest year of grad school to come. Like year 2 of grad school was still around the corner. Wow. And not to mention that I had to figure out what I was going to do with my summer. Like it was also just a very lonely summer. I ended up living in a friend's basement for the summer. It was my first introduction to house centipedes living in their basement. I had a spider egg sac like break open in my bed in the middle of the night and found myself covered in spiders. It was like mold. It was moldy, and like this is what the next steps of my life looked like.
You went through it,
Yeah. And so I felt like I had made a decision that left me with lots of obligation, lots of hard work, and nothing to nothing to redeem it and make it worthwhile. Not to mention the fact that also a year later, I would find out that I had been rejected from every PhD program that I had applied to. So both of the things that I had moved to Mankato for ended up being just absolute failures. And so I was left so many times just saying like, God, what are you doing? I felt like I had been duped. And I felt like I had just made a really like blind and careless mistake. So that those are a few insights into why it felt like just really huge failure.
Yeah, and I bet that felt so frustrating because it wasn't just like you making blind decisions. You brought God into the situation. You were praying. You were like faithful, and you were going before the throne of God like persistently, and like you prayed over that box. You prayed for guidance. You prayed for the wisdom. Yet it feels like wait, God, was I just like talking to myself? Oh man.
Yes. Yes, that is exactly that was a huge part of it as well, is that I couldn't help but wonder in the moment, like, God, are you where are you in the midst of this? And so even spiritually, it just felt like, is everything just dead right now? Like, is every part of my life just coming to a end of the road moment here, and I just have no clue what to do next?
Yeah. Wow. That's really hard. That's a very hard that's a hard lesson to learn that way. But
yes.
Now that you are older, wiser, all-knowing, just like you have in retrospect, you have all the wisdom.
Yes.
How has God met you through this failure?
Oh, that is a great question. I don't know about all the wisdom, but hopefully some of it. Hopefully some of the wisdom. I mean, so there are so many things that I look back on from this scenario and that I can just see that God was at work. And I mean, even just what we were just talking about there, Selah, about I prayed over this ring box and felt like, okay, everything still just fell apart. The reality is that God did answer my prayer. You know, obviously I wished that the answer was in the moment, not now. In the
Before
moment,
the box
I wished that the answer I wished in the moment that the answer to prayer was take a next step because this is going to work and you're going to be so glad that you did this. But what that was not the answer I wanted, but he was faithful and he answered my prayer and he said, I am going to make it abundantly clear what the right step is. And that was a grace to me. Because another part of the story that I didn't tell in the moment is that part of our sort of the moment that led to the official breakup at the psychology conference weekend thing is she and I got together. We went to a park, and at some point in the past, she had made like a list of these are the things that like these are some of my non-negotiables in a relationship. And I don't know if this was part of her like, I'm still discerning through this, and I also want to clue you in. Maybe she was wanting to tell me, like, John, here's some of the places that I feel like you're falling short. And I decided I wasn't necessarily intending to show it to her, but I did the same thing in the time in between giving her the box and meeting together. I had made a list too. And at the top of my list was someone who is in pursuit of Jesus and who is going to encourage me to keep doing that too. And so when we got together, I showed her my list. It felt like only fair that we had now exchanged lists. And I handed that to her. She read the top line and didn't need to go any further because her answer was, I am never going to want this the way that you want it.
Oh.
And I was like,
that relationship with Jesus.
Yes. The relationship with Jesus and the desire to help like urge you onward in your relationship as well. I will never want that the way that you want it. And I said in that moment, I was like, then there's no reason for us to talk any further about the rest of this list. Like if we are not on the same page here, we will never be on the same page. And the fact that like God put the pieces in motion for those couple of things to happen and for us to have an overt conversation like that to say, I'm never going to want this. That was the biggest gift God could have given me, was to
Yes.
know clearly that if we were going to try, I had to know that this person, that we would not be on the same page in our faith
Yeah.
relationship, at least setting off. Like, who knows how God has redeemed and worked in her life. And she was also in a long season of grief over this really serious loss of a family member. And so there's so little that I can really hold her to in that process, because that just, like, it throws off your life. But either way, that was a moment of God's faithfulness right there. It was super painful. It was so painful, but he was being so good to me. And then in the season that followed, like, my relationship with God, because he was the only one that I had in that, like, when she and I broke up and I was in this in-between stage with InterVarsity and my cohort, like, had not built a deep, meaningful relationship with them. He was it. He was my only point of contact, my only source of hope. And the depths that he and I went to, both in really painful conversations, but also in really powerful, life-giving. There's a whole other, like, sort of miracle story that I also don't think I've told, that we don't have time to tell today. But there was, like, a space there was a space where God showed up in, like, a miraculous way, did not give me any answers, but he told me so abundantly clearly, I love you and I am working in your life right now. Maybe another day will come that I can tell that story. But for me, it was, maybe other people would hear it and be like, okay, great. For me, it was like the hand of God reaching out and physically touching me in that moment. So that was obviously a huge win, is the way that relationship with the Lord just, like, exploded in powerful ways. He did then eventually bring me deep relationship with InterVarsity. With my InterVarsity community, there were people who showed up in my life and were just like, come on, come into this with us. And that's what, honestly, that's what led me deeper into like leading worship. That's what led me deeper into leadership, into, just becoming a part of, like, InterVarsity, becoming a part of my DNA, is hugely in part because of this massive breakup and being here at all. And that's huge. And I have classmates and chapter mates who are still really good friends of mine today. Like, we're still so close. And I we don't see each other very often, but it's those people that, like, you can just pick right up with. And it's amazing. Like I said, I'm also, like, in this cover band with an InterVarsity chapter, somebody who else, is an alum, and all these powerful things that, and then I would be remiss to not bring up the fact that, I met my wife through InterVarsity, and, like, if I had been married to this other person, we met through Mankato InterVarsity, and 15 years later, I am extremely glad that I did not marry that other person. I cannot imagine a better match for my life than Caitlin, and we have been through some stuff, and I can't imagine navigating that with anybody else. And this story that I just told, it was still 4 years before Caitlin and I got married. So there was still some serious waiting and wondering and, like, sort of wandering around that happened in between those things. So that was not an immediate answer, but certainly a part of it. So yeah,
God rarely,
a lot.
Yeah, it's rare that God gives us immediate answers, but I can imagine that there's a grad student or an alumni who's in a situation that God just revealed to them, or a failure that they just went through, and they're thinking, like, man, like, God, you could have just told me not to do that. You could have just taken this away from me. You could have, like, not, like, Lord, you could have not let me, like, move, and then I wouldn't have proposed, or all that stuff. Like, I wouldn't have changed my whole life, rearranged everything. It's so easy for us to be like, God, you could have not done this. You could have done this. You could have, would have, should have. But then now we get to look back on it and really like glorify God for everything that he has done.
Yes.
And the sanctification and the renewal that happens, that's why he allows us to make those mistakes. And that's why he, oh my goodness, like, like the growth that you went through and the change that happened to you, would not have happened if God was like, well, he could have, God is going to accomplish his will no matter what, whether or not we move, whether or not we befriend this or that person, he's still going to move. But it's like it's in the valley that God's going to be like molding us and shaping us. That's really awesome. Man, I hope I have that perspective if something like that ever happens to me. Please, Lord, no. Anyway, what's now that you've gone through all of that, you're able to have some perspective and look back on it. What's some advice that you would give alumni who are experiencing failure after graduation?
Yeah. Oh gosh. There's a couple verses from 2 Corinthians 12 that stand out to me. I wrote them down because I don't have them memorized, so I'll read them to you. This is 2 Corinthians 12, 9 through 11. But he said to me, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. That is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weaknesses, in insults, in hardships, in persecutions, in difficulties. For when I am weak, then I am strong." Easier said than done, for sure. But I think my advice to alumni, and I've said this in a couple of intros and outros already for this series, but I'll say it again, and that's that you are going to fail after graduation. You just are. Sometimes it will be because you messed up, alumni. Like, I have failed plenty of times because I messed up. Sometimes it will be because someone else messed up and you are just the recipient of failure. And sometimes it'll just be because the world is messed up. Like, those are all elements that are in this. And it's just going to happen. But no matter the failure, God can and will use it to accomplish his purposes. I want to be careful about saying that, like, God leads us into failure, or that God orchestrated this moment of failure so that I don't know. God can do what he wants to do but what I know for sure, whether or not he leads us into it, what I know for sure is that he leads us out of it, and that he redeems it and he uses it to build his kingdom and to accomplish his purposes and to draw you into a deeper relationship with him. And yes, mourn the loss when a failure happens. Mourn the loss, grieve that thing that you were really excited about, or that you worked so hard for and that didn't work out. That's fine. The fact that it is painful and that it hurts means that you were invested, and that's a good thing. Mourn the loss, but also celebrate this. And this is easier said than done. I recognize that. Celebrate just like you would as if you had succeeded, because God does not need your success to accomplish his work. He doesn't need me to be successful for him to accomplish what he's going to accomplish, because whether it's through success or failure, he's going to do what he wants, and he's going to do it right. He's going to do the right thing. And as Selah already mentioned, all of the glory will be for him. And we will just get to bask in the reality that God invited us to be a part of the thing that he was doing to accomplish his work. So my piece of advice is, even as you mourn, also rejoice, because God is not set back by that failure. In this weak moment, he is still at his strongest, and he is still hard at work in your life. And you serve a God who sees you, who knows you, and who is including you in his plan, failures and all, perceived or actual, and that is really good news for us.
Alumni, I hope this series about failure has done a couple things. One, I hope it's encouraged you to normalize the reality of failure in life after graduation. If you're experiencing failure, you are among a lot of really great alumni friends who are right there with you. Two, I hope it has encouraged you to open your eyes up wide so that you can be ready to see God at work. You might not see it today, but I promise that He is moving in the midst of your hardest moments and that He is going to use them to accomplish great things. Thanks, John, for sharing your story, and thanks for tuning in, alumni. It was a blast to host. I will be back. Speaking of coming back, be sure that you come back next week for the start of our brand new series called Evangelism When. John, along with some fellow alumni and university staff, are going to help you prepare for some common scenarios where you might be presented with an opportunity to share Jesus in life after graduation. There's some really great real-life stories and some solid training coming your way. Until then, consider sharing this episode with someone who needs to hear it, and I will see you in the After Alumni.
Thanks for listening to After 4. This podcast is brought to you by the InterVarsity Alumni Relations Team, hosted and produced by John Steele, production assistance by Mike Zentera, edited by Caleb Leppert, and our After 4 theme music was written and performed by John Steele.